Hello there, my brothers and sisters. It's Josh Packard. Today we're going to talk about love, what love really is, as opposed to sentimentalism or infatuation or lust. And we're going to talk about what love really is, and in God's eyes and His standard versus ours. If any of you were like me, you no one was ever a role model. I never had a role model in my life that was godly or and even if they were, Christian, they weren't. They were still fleshly, carnal Christians, and not at all in a position to teach. And today we have that same problem. When the entire church is based upon infatuation towards God and sentimentalism towards God, where are you guys getting your model from? Where are we? Where are we supposed to get our model from? So, if you think I'm being far-fetched, let's put it to the test, shall we? When you approach God, if you're approaching Him, so like you and I, let's say you and I together, we decide we're going to have fellowship with one another. And so we come together, and I present to you what I think that you want to see, or what I think I want to be perceived as, and you present yourself to me in a similar manner, we could be 1 foot away from each other. We could be kissing, and we would be completely veiled to each other. There'd be no relationship. There'd be no knowledge of each other because we're still hiding. We're still behind a curtain or the veil. So we can't be seen nor be known. Okay? And this is the premise of what I'm going to talk about today, versus infatuation versus actual love. Okay, and sentimentalism, because what most people think, and this is going to be the vast majority of even Christians, what they think love is only sentimentalism, and it's pond scum of love. It's like the lowest form of basically like titillation, and it's based upon need. So that what happens is two people come together and they need each other. So what happens is they're sucking from each other for enjoyment and for happiness and for a feeling of satisfaction. But the problem is that there's only a limited pool, and you're already depleted because you're still underneath the dominion of sin. So it's not loving each other because you're just leeching off each other for momentary satisfaction. And that's called infatuation or sentimentalism. Okay. And so I want to paint this picture for you with God and our relationships with Him. So like, say if you did this before God and you come before Him trying to present yourself as a good Christian and as you think He'd want you to be seen, or as you would want to be perceived as, if you approach God that way, you can't know Him nor fellowship with Him. You can't, because you're not allowing yourself to be known. It has to be a two-way street. So God is the truth, but you're false. So you can't fellowship. So the way out of that falseness has to come first with your realization of God, that He's done everything on your behalf, that there is no more conscience of sin, that you are completely set free, you're completely exonerated, you're completely accepted in the beloved. Now, you have to come to that knowledge, that God is pleased with you as you stand to produce what is pleasing. You understand? It has to be first. God has to be pleased with you before you can even do what's pleasing to Him. You have to be right with God before you can do the things that are right with God. You have to be righteous before you can do righteous things. Because until then, you're still from the position of trying to earn God's favor. You're still thinking you're a sinner. You're still thinking you've got to be saved, and you've got to get out of hell, and you've got to blah, 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 blah. Well, then you're serving God from your need. And that's the opposite of free will, because everyone says, oh, it's our free will to choose. Well, that's not what free will is for in the first place. But free will is for this relationship. So God is all about free will. But the only way you can approach Him with free will is to have all your needs taken care of and met. So that you have no need to come out of fear or shame or guilt, because from that position you have dishonored God. And you're false, you're a hypocrite, and you cannot fellowship with Him, nor with each other. Now take that into your relationships, okay? So now when you first meet somebody and you're like all infatuated, and I'll speak from my experience where this girl, she's so hot, and I want to get to know her. And well, my old tactic as being the romancer is that I would just say, well, what are you looking for in a man? And then she would tell me her list of all the things she's looking for in a man. Then I'd say, oh, it's great, because I'm all those things you want. And to my surprise, she would fall for it like 99% of the time. But I also fell for her. It's her lie from the beginning, because she has no idea what she wants. So then our relationship was always based on falseness in the first place. And it was also, I was trying to conform to her needs and she was trying to conform to my needs. And it was just like, man, that is not relationship. That is not love. So I'm requiring her to be something other than what she is in order for me to feel like I'm whole. That's not love. Love would be on the other side, as if she came to me knowing I loved her no matter what, that she didn't have to be anything, she didn't have to pretend to be anything. So the glory for me would be that she approached me just as she is, without shame. Because that would mean what love is. That means she's accepted wholly on every level, so that she has nothing to worry about. You know what I mean? So there's no feeling of the butterflies, there's no feeling of fear, or that I might ever leave, or that she might lose my love, or whatever's going on. Because from that position, if she was in that position of fear, trying to gain my acceptance, my love, well, that means sin had dominion over her. That her needs are ruling her every thought and decision in our relationship. And what happens is that she's trying to just keep me happy, so she can't be her. So then I don't even have an opportunity to love her. I'm only being presented with the fake woman she's presenting to me out of her sin. Now think about this with God. So in your sin, when you're thinking, am I even saved? Or I've got to go to church, I've got to do this, I've got to do this. You have all these ideas of what God wants, and you're just beating yourself up daily. Can you fellowship with God that way? Seeing that you're dominated by your sin, that you're trying to approach him from the idea of need. And anyway, that's not how you can approach God, because he's already done the sacrifice so that you could lay that down. There is another person who is actually pretending to be God, and he's convinced us that he is God, and his name is the accuser. And he's the one that feeds off your sin and your need. And he's the one that promises you everything if you just. So we really got to be careful who we're calling Jesus, because Jesus has loved you unconditionally. There is nothing. He brings you in equity. He brings you in with judgment. He brings you in with love and security and peace. And this is where our relationship with Christ is. So now in your relationships with each other, if we're with that person expecting them to make us happy, well, then our relationship with God is wrong. We're completely out of the place, and we're taking from somebody who already only has very little in order to feed ourselves. And is that love? I mean, answer to yourself, is that love? It's not. So now my wife, she has all these women's groups on our Facebook, and she goes to all these women deals and mothers groups and all these things around here. And she's just telling me all these common complaints and gripes these women have. And it's almost always the same. And it's their husbands are not leaders, and that they want to submit, but they can't because their husband is not taking the reins, and blah, blah, blah. Well, first of all, let's take a look at what happened in the garden. So, you ever wonder why Satan went to Eve first? Because that's how he was going to get to Adam, was through Eve. He went to something he loved dearly. And so what happened was, once she ate of the fruit, did you see her consult her husband or God? No, she took matters into her own hands. She came out from under her covering. She went and made up her own mind, and she ate of the fruit. Well, what happened to Adam? He had this option. She dies and I lose her forever, or I eat with her and be with her, and so he loves her that much that he would eat of the fruit and go be with her. And a lot of people would say that's romantic, but it's not. Because what happened was is that his need for her caused him to do something. And so his need for her caused him to do what damned her. Does it make sense? Is that love at all? You don't understand. And so then when God charged him, he didn't charge Adam with eating of the fruit. He asked him if he did, but that's not what he charged him for. The reason the curse came upon Adam is because he listened to his wife rather than God. Okay, so setting this premise, let's look at this today. So a woman who is ungodly will be more feminist, and she'll try to take the reins. She might disguise it and say, oh, I don't really want them, but you're taking the reins, because what you're saying is your husband isn't godly enough and he's not taking the lead, so I'm going to take the lead. Even though you don't even know which way that is, because likely you're not in your scriptures, and likely you're only being fed by some pastor that doesn't know much anyway. So your husband, so what you're saying is that your husband is not conforming to the idea that you think he ought to conform to. And so therefore you're not submitting to him. Well, who told you your image was right? First of all. The second thing is if you want him to take his position, then if you are truly more godly than he is, then what you need to do is encourage him into godliness. Because in my relationship with Jesus, Jesus won't force me. He won't rule over me. I have to submit myself to him, and then he rules. So then, in a man, that's the same way. If you are more godly than him, even if you are, I'm not even going to argue that point. Even if you are, then prove it. So, in the church system, you have all these women pastors and stuff now, and they lead worship and do stuff, and this is prevalent all over Idaho right now. And I'm going, are you kidding me? Okay, again, going back to this premise. So a woman, when she takes the headship, so first of all, that shows that she's separated from God, that she would desire the headship, okay? The next thing is that men, whenever they're separated from God, what they will do is submit to the women, just like Adam did. It's crazy watching this happen. So then these women take these positions in leadership because they're saying men aren't stepping up. Well, what happens is that these men that are not stepping up won't now step up because you've taken their position. And they'll just let you have it. They don't care. Because you're not submitting. So then rather, a woman's place in the church is to support men to take their leadership, because that is your worship before God. Not because men deserve it, not because they're better at it than you, because you could be better in all ways. You could be more godly, more spiritual, know your scriptures left and right. You might have faith that could move mountains. But if you're not encouraging men to take their place and stepping out of the way and allowing them to, well, first off, you have usurped the men, just like Eve. You've shown that you're more concerned with your exaltation than the men's or God's, for that matter. Sorry. This is a matter about God's kingdom, not your pride. Okay? This isn't the way it is. I don't love my wife because she deserves it. I love my wife because God fills me. And then my act of worship is to love my wife. I've committed myself to her, and to him. And this is the way it works. I love her because I'm not perfect, no one is. But I've ascended to the idea that God has filled me, so I fill my wife. I'm here for her. So, now women, if you want that, then you need to get out of the way, and you need to lay down your image of what your husband needs to be. And you lay it down because you have no idea. You need to work on what you need to be. Okay? First of all, because women aren't. I don't hear many women, I see women taking the spots in the spotlight. I see women up there leading worship. I see women pastors now. I see all these women usurping authority over men everywhere. That automatically shows me that you're out of the way. That you are seeking your own glory above God's immediately. And if you want to talk about scriptures with me, we'll talk about it. And we'll talk, and we'll show you how Paul forbids it for this reason, that a woman ought to, if she prays or prophesies, she needs to have her head covered in a show of submission for the angels or the messengers. So, anyways, folks, you kind of see what I'm saying here. Love can only happen from full acceptance, from full exoneration, to where there is no need to take from each other. Love can only happen when you're completely eye to eye, when you're completely accepted, you're completely righteous with each other, beginning with God. If you're still a sinner and you're worried about whether or not you're saved, you're worried about whether or not you're pleasing God, you're still out of the way. You're still wrong. You're still not received His sacrifice. You don't believe in Jesus. So, anyways, folks, have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you soon. All right, bye.